Cathie Wood, Elon Musk, and Jack Dorsey just went on the B Word, a conference about Bitcoin that tries to demystify, destigmatize, and in their own words, correct the mainstream narrative surrounding the cryptocurrency. Now, some very interesting things were said by all three of the guests, but today we're going to look at what Cathie Wood had to say about Bitcoin. Now, Cathie is a known Bitcoin bull. She believes in the currency long term and has publicly stated that she thinks it's going to reach $500,000 before long. She's made public her desire to start a Bitcoin ETF within Ark Invest, something that would allow millions of people to invest in Bitcoin and perhaps some other cryptocurrencies as well through tax-advantaged accounts and without leaving their comfort zones. It's no surprise that Cathie spoke positively about Bitcoin during this conference, but she also came out with some things that we hadn't heard before. And I think it's worthwhile looking at what she had to say and hearing her out. So I'm going to play a couple of clips of her for you guys in a second. But really quickly, if you're new here, subscribe to the channel. We're putting out loads of content just like this constantly that you don't want to miss out on.
Oh, well, I'll recount the story about Art Laffer and our going through the paper. And he said, as I said, first rules-based monetary system, global, ever. This is a very big idea. Once we had convinced him of the ecosystem itself. Now, this is the role that it's playing, given that the rule is a quantity rule, that 21 million units, is really a store of value role. So there are three roles of money: store of value, very important, the means of exchange, so for transactions, and the unit of account. Every good priced in terms of whatever the unit is. So store of value is its primary use right now. The others exist. Unit of account, reserve currency of the crypto asset ecosystem. That's being seeded a little bit towards stable coins right now. But the store of value is a very big role. And means of exchange with apps built on top of the Bitcoin blockchain, we think is going to become more of a reality. Right now, high value transactions take place over Bitcoin, and that is a very useful role. So we look at those, and I remember saying to Art, "How big could this be?" And he said, "Well, how big is the U.S. monetary base?" Well, today it's $8 trillion. $8 trillion. At the time we were talking, it was $4 trillion. So we've gone through another crisis since then. And so this store of value, this idea that purchasing power will go up over time if demand rises relative to supply ultimately fixed at 21 million units. That's a very good thing. Purchasing power going up globally around the world.
So Cathie explained how she feels that money has three basic requirements. And if Bitcoin is to become the native currency of the internet or just a widely used currency in general, it needs to fill those three requirements. Now, some of these are easier to understand than others, but I'm going to cover them all for you guys just in case. So firstly, a store of value. Now that's quite self-explanatory. It's something that can be used to store value, wealth, or utility. It's something that is widely seen as valuable by everyone else in the world. So if you ever want to trade your hard-earned cash for it, or vice versa, there will always be a buyer or a seller. The most obvious example of this is gold. Yes, some gold is purchased to be made into jewelry or to be used in industry, but most people buy gold as a store of value. Bitcoin's main current use is really as a store of value. Most people who hold Bitcoin are doing so because they don't want to hold cash and they see it as a strong asset to hedge against inflation or uncertain economic times. Where Bitcoin stumbles is with the second and third functions of money, units of account and mediums of exchange. Now, as a unit of account, Bitcoin could work quite well, but it's a little bit too volatile. A unit of account is supposed to measure the value of things. If you list something for sale for 1 Bitcoin and then the price of Bitcoin crashes by 50%, then suddenly the price has changed drastically. On the other hand, if you list the price in stable coins like USDC, BUSD or TUSD, then the price will remain far more stable. Because of this, Cathie thinks that stable coins are the better choice for units of account, and it's hard to argue against her. Most people who trade crypto use stable coins as their base as opposed to Bitcoin, and this is a trend most people see accelerating, not reversing. But unfortunately, Bitcoin also fails the third test for money, a medium of exchange. We all know that actually buying things with Bitcoin is slow and expensive. It takes an average of 10 minutes to verify a transaction, and the fees are likely to be more expensive than the actual product you're buying. Now, these problems can be improved, but not without destroying the integrity of Bitcoin. Now, the Lightning Network, or Square Crypto, whose CEO was the third man you probably didn't recognize in that video, run services that allow people to transact with Bitcoin quickly and efficiently. But as a result of these companies' involvement, Bitcoin loses its biggest draw, decentralization. These companies are essentially acting like a bank processing payments, with Bitcoin acting like a fiat currency, which is the very thing Bitcoin is supposed to oppose. Cathie's main point throughout that entire clip there is that Bitcoin is probably the best store of value in the crypto world, but Ethereum and Cardano are probably the best mediums of exchange in the crypto world, and stable coins are probably the best units of account. It seems pretty clear that Cathie doesn't think Bitcoin can fulfill all of these roles, but she's still very bullish on Bitcoin despite that. She said herself that Bitcoin could reach a market cap equal to that of the US dollar, $8 trillion. And if that isn't bullish, then I don't know what is.
And this idea that it's a hedge against confiscation of wealth, and that can take place in a myriad of ways. But inflation, and especially hyperinflation in emerging markets, is the primary way. Talk about destroying purchasing power. So that's a very big idea. And I'll also mention deflation. In some ways, it's a hedge against deflation. I know some people are confused that we at Ark think that we're in a deflationary environment here in the United States. If that is true, the odds of a hyperinflation in the rest of the world, especially in emerging markets, is also true. So, but this deflation, and we learned from 0809, there's counterparty risk associated with deflation. And I think Bitcoin would be a hedge against that eventuality as well. So it's a very big idea.
So what Cathie touched on there, and something that I think is far more important than it might seem, is the idea that Bitcoin is a hedge against tough market conditions in general. We all know that Bitcoin has been called digital gold, and that gold is a strong inflation hedge. So we expect Bitcoin to become a strong inflation hedge as well. But Cathie also mentioned that Bitcoin can be a hedge against confiscation of wealth or against overbearing governments. She touches on the idea that Bitcoin can be used to protect oneself from an authoritarian government that is trying to steal someone's wealth, which is a huge problem when you realize that over 4 billion people live under authoritarian governments in the world today. She even presented the idea that Bitcoin could be a hedge against deflation as well, which is something that I personally hadn't ever considered. Now this seems odd, because if the US dollar is deflationary, then just holding onto your cash means you'll be richer every day. So why would someone want to trade their dollars for Bitcoin? Well, Cathie's perspective is that Bitcoin is global, and that a deflationary US dollar would increase the likelihood of inflation in other less stable countries. That's where Bitcoin would shine. Now, Bitcoin would see more use in those countries as a result of deflation in the US, which is why Cathie sees Bitcoin as a deflation hedge as well as an inflation hedge. Now, I know that that seems a bit far-fetched and you might struggle to agree with that, but I would encourage you to look at the history behind deflation and the kind of inflation that it can cause in other countries around the world. It's really easy to write this off as the ramblings of a madwoman, but it's worth remembering that Cathie Wood was an economist and a historian of economics before she was a fund manager. This is one area where she probably knows what she's talking about.
Can you maybe speak a little bit more to what is S and G in ESG, and how Bitcoin might support those?
Sure. So E, of course, is environmental, S is social, and G is governance. And there is a massive movement afoot in the institutional world, especially, to embrace ESG and make sure that their asset managers are doing the same. So if you we've just talked about environmental, and I really do believe that Bitcoin will be much more environmentally friendly, certainly, than traditional gold mining or the traditional financial services sector. In many ways, it already is, and it's just going to get better that way. In terms of social, I know that many institutions, when they are thinking of social, they think of diversity and equity, pay equity, and all of that. But if from our point of view, the disruptive innovation point of view, social is much more than that. It is saving lives, of course, autonomous technology, that would be another topic for Elon. But in this case, allowing access to payment technology, as Jack is saying, everywhere around the world without friction. And just back to the remittance example, I think if I've got these stats correctly, there are certain countries in the world that are incredibly dependent on remittances for GDP. Tonga, 37%, El Salvador, which just deemed Bitcoin legal currencies, 24%, Nepal, 24%. And I think the remittance industry globally, roughly 700 billion. So saving people these egregious fees, think about it, you're paying anywhere from 8% to, as Jack said, 30% of your $100 that you're sending back to your family. That is a social responsibility, I would submit, as is just the economic empowerment that Bitcoin will enable. We've talked about that already. And I know that Alex Gladstein is going to be talking later about, the 4.3 billion people in the world who are hostage to authoritarian regimes, or the 1.3 billion who are living in double-digit and triple-digit inflation, if not more. Saving them from the destruction of their purchasing power certainly is a noble social goal. So we expand social to be much more than the traditional ESG community. And then on governance, you've got the transparency of the ecosystem. It's completely transparent, unlike the opaqueness of financial systems and the toll takers in the traditional financial world. And I think a huge part of governance in the Bitcoin ecosystem are the Bitcoin core developers.
So first, Cathie told us what she thinks the future of Bitcoin holds, and now she's told us how she thinks Bitcoin will improve our future, and it all really stems from ESG, environmental, societal, and governance. Now, these three things are something that have become very important to large institutions, especially those that invest in other companies recently. And investment funds like Ark Invest like to show that they're not only supporting companies or asset classes that are likely to make them money, but are also going to improve the world we live in. Now, in terms of environmental, Cathie thinks that Bitcoin mining will become more and more green over time until it is actually greener and less environmentally damaging than physical gold mining, for example. She also thinks that the incentive for Bitcoin miners to develop and use cheaper renewable sources of electricity will drive innovation and will actually aid the environment as a whole. Now, let's be honest, while this is a possible outcome, right now 0.7% of the world's electricity use goes towards Bitcoin mining, and most of it comes from fossil fuels. Bitcoin could incentivize renewable energy in the long run, but this isn't happening yet, and we are without a doubt a long way away from Bitcoin actually being good for the environment. In terms of societal improvement, Cathie believes that this is where Bitcoin and decentralized finance in general will shine, and I tend to agree with her there. Bitcoin will allow people to protect themselves from authoritarian governments. It will allow immigrants to send money home to family far quicker and cheaper than is currently possible, and on the whole, it will be a force for good in the world. In terms of governance, Cathie is especially confident in Bitcoin because it is the first thing in the world created by humans that cannot be altered by humans. No one can print more Bitcoin to benefit themselves at the expense of others. And Cathie has spoken with and met the lead developers of Bitcoin and was impressed with their knowledge of economic theory and history. All in all, I think Cathie makes a clear and well-reasoned case for why Bitcoin has a bright future and why it will be a net positive for the world. The only part of her argument that I think may just be a little bit too optimistic is her belief that Bitcoin will be in the long run good for the environment. But she does have access to an awful lot of data and information that we don't see, so maybe there is something going on behind the veil that will be revealed soon enough. If you're new to the channel and you enjoyed this video, then make sure to subscribe. If you want to help spread the word, then like the video and leave a comment, and YouTube will do its part by spreading this video out to more people just like you. There are links down below in the description where you can get $25 for free from crypto.com, $25 for free from BlockFi, and up to $2,300 in free stocks from Webull. It's the closest thing to free money you'll ever get, so make sure to check those links out. Thanks for watching. Until next time.